CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome to yet another episode with me, Begin Kosimoyo, the Director of the Center on African Philanthropy and Social Investment, on our conversations on African philanthropy. Today I'm very excited to be joined by Daphney, who I was struggling to pronounce your last name, Nemakhavhani, right?
Yes.
And I was asking you, what does it mean?
I said I don't know.
That's a good way to start. Daphney, you've been with the University of Johannesburg as the Director of Development and Fundraising, but you've also been a student here at the West Business School, focusing on philanthropy and resource mobilization. I wanted to have this conversation with you on those two levels. Firstly, on the level of your experiences and the work that you do in the fundraising and development space, but I also want us to talk a bit about your experiences as a student. So let me thank you for making the time. So let's start with your current role that you serve as the Director of Development and Fundraising at the University of Johannesburg. Not many universities actually have offices that are dedicated to fundraising. And I think in this country, there's been a series of interventions by different institutions, Inyatelo, among others, trying to set up what they called advancement offices in different universities. And of course, different universities will then use different names to refer to that. Tell us, or tell our audience, what exactly goes into the Office of Development and Fundraising in a higher education institution.
Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome.
And thank you for having me. Yes, you're quite right. Most universities, they dedicate resources specifically for resource mobilization. Have been a director for development and fundraising at UJ for about, this is my 4th year now, but I have been doing fundraising for the past 10 years, having been a senior manager in the funding office. And one of my responsibilities was also to fundraise, but only for bursaries for students. And I think fundraising for higher institutions is very important because essentially the office is tasked with mobilizing resources for the university to sustain itself, to advance the mission of the university. So the reason you would have hesitation perhaps around fundraising and development is because when you look at South African landscape, higher learning education landscape, there has been so much dependency on government, state subsidies, but then what we have seen is that over the years, the state subsidy has been, or the state support has been declining. Thus, many institutions, you see them robustly engaging in fundraising activities and dedicating their efforts to fundraising, with most of them understanding that the vice chancellor and principal of the university is the chief fundraiser, but is therefore supported by the development and fundraising office.
Yeah. So let's start with the concept of the vice chancellor being the chief fundraiser. And most universities might not even know that. Some have already gotten to that stage. And some vice chancellors might know that, yes, I'm the chief fundraiser, but until there's a crisis and until maybe there's reductions, like we are saying, it may not really occupy them. I mean, they wouldn't think of it as something that on a day-to-day basis, this is what they should be doing. And I think we have seen with various universities, especially post the fees must fall context and others, where vice chancellors all of a sudden realize they have to raise funding, not just for student fees, but also for infrastructure, for research, etc. And then you see them now attending courses on fundraising, among others. I know that UJ, there's a history of vice chancellors actually taking that work seriously. I used to meet your former vice chancellor in some of the meetings in New York, where he was attending courses on fundraising. And you would sit there among other colleagues, listening and studying how to fundraise. So what is the importance of the political support as well as the technical leadership that you get from a vice chancellor when it comes to unlocking resources?
So, Prof, I would say in my view, the Vice Chancellor is the Chief Executive Officer. So he leads by example. And when you get the support from your Vice Chancellor, it carries weight because, as you would know, fundraising, it works if it's a coordinated approach. So when you have a support of the Vice Chancellor, because the people don't give to the fundraiser, they don't give to the university, they give through the university. And also as a fundraiser, you connect the university's priority project, you align the with whatever there is in the market. But then there are people who are implementers, there are researchers, there are administrators who are project leaders and project manager internally. So seeing the Vice Chancellor as the lead fundraiser, someone who is buying into supporting the fundraising activities, it carries so much weight even with the donors out there, because they have a trust in the leader who's leading by an example. And one thing that I can say as well is that currently I'm in a very fortunate position where my Vice Chancellor is very supportive of fundraising. He is not only mobilizing resources, but he is also a donor himself. And for me as a fundraiser, you talk to many people, many potential donors, for them to see the head of the university buying into the mission or driving in front, being someone who is supporting the fundraising initiative, carries so much weight in my view. And I think it's very important now, more than ever, seeing at what's been happening, like I have already mentioned, with the cuts in government subsidies, also with everything that is going on, because mostly to fund education, you take from somewhere to release those resources, maybe to cover other things, because I still believe that philanthropy is a powerful tool that can contribute so much to education.
So you just raised one of the principles that I normally talk about when I host sessions on fundraising, which is that for any donor to give to your cause or to your organization, at times they want to see that the leadership is committed, and part of commitment is actually by the leadership becoming the first donors. They must believe in what they are asking others to support. And if they don't give themselves, why should others do? So that's one of the key principles that in fundraising we have not really tapped into. If you look at most of our institutions in Africa that are looking for resources from others, if you asked them if they are directors, their board, their leaders have given to the institution, you will find that most of them have not done that. And that's something that I always find very fascinating when I hold these sessions, because I actually think you must be the first to give to your cause, and then you go out to ask and say, I actually believe and this is my commitment. It doesn't matter how much money you give, but at least if you show that commitment. So I think that's something that maybe as we grow the field, we should actually see that happening a lot. And then you're also talking about government cuts in subsidies. One of your colleagues is actually doing a specific study on that, focusing on 2 universities. I would come back to your office, but I wanted to understand, why has your unit taken studying philanthropy and resource mobilization so seriously? Because we probably have about 3 of you from the same unit. Potentially, we're likely to have a 4th person.
Well, I don't know about potentially, but
I won't reveal names, but I know there's potentially a 4th person.
Look, Prof, I'm a greatest supporter of education. And as I've said now, a leader lead by example. I believe in education, that it levels the ground. Then when we all educated is anyone's game. And for me, philanthropy is the most understood concept Maybe because philanthropy on its own, the term philanthropy is Western, not really African. So in my experience being a fundraiser, most of the fundraising practitioners, the skills that they have absorbed is from learning from someone or seeing someone doing that, or reading books. I like reading, so I read a lot of books in fundraising, but most of it is fundraising in America, Asian philanthropy and all that. And for me, I was fascinated when I saw that VETS is offering a course in philanthropy, particularly African philanthropy. And then part of that is because I do believe that Africa, we have our own stories to tell. They might not be publicized enough, but we do have our stories to tell, and they are ripe enough to be told as well. So what I encourage my team is to continuously learn, because the fundraising landscape is evolving. Fundraising as it was in the 90s, it has completely changed now in today's life. Well, some of the basic principles remains, but there has been a lot of evolution in fundraising. So I do encourage my team to continuously study, empower themselves, learn new things, so that they can also empower others. And one thing that I always say, particularly when it comes to the African philanthropy, I believe that it's something really that shows the world that Africans also have the potential. They have things that are doing. As I said, we don't publicize those enough. Part of it is out of respect for the people who are benefiting from those initiatives. And because I learned a lot, there's quite a lot of literature and information that's out there that can assist the fundraisers to do their work, particularly in times like this where the fundraising space is a very competitive one.
So back to your office, for others who have not even begun thinking of setting up a specific office within a university, or those that are thinking of doing it now, I mean, universities will differ, and I think contexts will differ, but what are the key considerations as you are thinking of setting up a fundraising and development office? What are the key considerations? And if you were to look at your own setup and you are helping somebody who wants to do that, what would be the initial things to do? And as they grow, what are the certain skills and expertise that they need to bring on board?
Look, like I said, UJ has they're not offering any course in philanthropy, but they do have a master's in sustainability. And I think when we see the setup like KEPSI, people can learn a lot from those setup. Like I said, philanthropy is understudied, and a lot of people don't really, or they are not yet there in terms of mobilizing resources. And we can't quantify something that we are not studying. If you want to tell your own story or to set your own agenda, if you don't want people to set your own agenda, then you should be able to study. You should be able to study so that you are more competent, or you are more knowledgeable in your area of expertise. So I suppose you were asking about setting up a development office, or in any. I don't know many universities who don't have development and fundraising offices, but I do know a lot of offices, because we benchmark a lot and we talk a lot as colleagues. I know a lot of offices that are still struggling with the skills for philanthropy, and I think people like yourself, Prof, and your students should be able to lead the way in assisting those colleagues, because you have been there. I believe you have been, you are a fundraiser, not you have been a fundraiser. As much as you are an academic, you are a fundraiser as well, because fundraising is a space that is professionalized now. We no longer go there with a begging bower. We go there to co-create value or exchange value. So the skill is needed, not only in terms of experience, but the skill that will challenge your assumptions as well. Because as a practitioner, we have, based on our experience, we have a lot of assumptions, but most of those assumptions are not backed up by any data. And then when you look at fundraising as it is from an undergraduate level, or let me say philanthropy, because it's broad now. You don't have a course that a student can just, it's more of a specialization. Now that you are already in the field, then you want to specialize in philanthropy. But I still think most of the people don't see, as important as philanthropy is, they don't see it as a career. They don't see the third sector, as we would call it, as something that someone can take as a career going forward. So I think we need to preach a lot. There's a lot of education that is needed. When you look at other professions like accounting, you have dedicated body professions that are earmarked for those particular group of professionals. I do think we need something like that in Africa, because I know that there's Chartered Institute of Fundraising, but it's more, I'm not aware if there is any for us, but I know the US based one. So I do think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but I suppose that is why you have schools like KEPSI, that is why you have institutions like Inyatelo, because philanthropy is a very important subject, not only for education, but it's a very important subject to transform the world.
So one of the misconceptions, I don't know whether this happens at your university, but one of the misconceptions in most of universities is that the fundraising and development office should raise money for everyone. And yet that's not possible, because the university as a whole is just this big entity where heads of schools, deans, academics should actually be fundraising. But in most instances, there's this misconception that the fundraising must be done by just this office. Has that been something that you have come across, or in your case, there are clear demarcations and everything is working very well?
Look, I'm more able to articulate it now in my university, but it's always a perception that a fundraising office, or rather fundraising is the fundraising office responsibility only. But I think what's clear in my institution is that fundraising is everyone's business, and that's some of the lessons that I have learned from KEPSI as well. Yes, the development and fundraising office will lead in front for priority projects. They will coordinate, because we also need coordination in fundraising, but all the deans in my environment, my principals, my executive leadership group, a management executive committee, they are aware that fundraising is everyone's business, because at the end of the day, a successful outcome of the solicitation or fundraising is based on who is doing the solicitation. So they are more aligned to the principles of, are you the right person to be making that ask? Because there is also a notion of peer-to-peer fundraising. Some of, and I can even make an example with just an alumni who is a CEO of an organization, who is more likely to respond positively to you as the dean or the head of the school than the fundraiser. So I think all in all, the perception is there, but in reality is that fundraising doesn't operate in isolation and it's not only one office function. Is the whole institutions. I think, like you said the other day, that when you talk about the fundraising strategy, it should be something that even the receptionist or even someone at the gate as a security guard buys into that and they understand that this is our strategy for fundraising, because at the end of the day it's not only about money, but it's about the strategic sustainable relationships that you are building.
I mean, I'm glad that you say that, because I think you know, at times people don't make the connections. For example, in one of you know, your graduations recently, there was an incident at the gate where people were, I mean, of course, we've understood now that people were late for the graduation. That incident on its own, if not properly handled, either by the security or the people communicating, can have a huge impact on potential givers. And so the importance of making everyone understand that even though fundraising is a specialized you know, discipline, and there are people who are sitting in that fundraising office, they are not sitting in an island. They are impacted by the behavior of everyone around, and it could just take somebody at the gate and to actually damage the reputation of an institution. But what would you say have been some of the greatest moments for you at the helm of fundraising?
The home of fundraising?
Like as the director of fundraising, or as somebody who's been in the fundraising space, what have been those moments that, you know, every time you think of them, you smile?
It's the impact. You know, I always say I'm in a very fortunate position or privilege to be doing more, or I feel like I'm more, and I'm also given an opportunity to do more. The greatest really moment for me is to see the impact. We work with communities sometimes. Just see a community far in the Eastern Cape that did not have access to water. And whether you believe it or not, there are still communities that are fetching their water, you know, at the same place where the cows and everyone is doing their laundry and all that. Just to see the power of philanthropy, just getting a donor who gives those people access to or resources to get access to water. For me, it's quite overwhelmingly exciting, for lack of a better word. And it makes me feel like really, you know, smaller things that we do make a difference in someone's life. Because in most cases, I think we are so ignorant of what's happening outside our comfort zone. Something that you view as nothing, as something that you take for granted as water. I think if we don't have water, when we still had water shedding or whatever that they called it, just for a day, you feel so miserable, and you would understand that what are the majority of the people who don't have resources experience on their day-to-day lives. So for me, just seeing that impact, I mean, you have a lot of students who would have just dropped out and left the university, but the power of that one individual who has changed their lives and transformed their lives, for me, it makes me sleep peacefully at night. And I know that normally when we talk about resource mobilization, fundraising, we talk targets and all that. But sometimes it's not about that. It's about lives that are being transformed, because an educated individual who is supported by philanthropy, that investment, it doesn't only make the difference in that individual's life only. It affects their community, it affects their family as well, and everyone around them. So I think that what makes me sleep at night.
And of course, there are definitely some challenges that you face as a fundraiser. And in your case, there's an added layer. You're a black woman in the fundraising space, which the space has always been in many ways reserved for white men.
Yes.
So what are some of the challenges that you've faced, or those that you are currently facing?
Look, Prof, I think one of your colleagues talked about resilience. There's a lot going on into this space. Obviously, as you would understand, as a fundraiser, you have to build relationships. there is a lot of challenges before you get to that stage where you can say, they even open the door for you. Sometimes the door is closed and locked before you even enter, or the gate is closed, so you can't even get to the door because you don't have those connections, or you don't have even those resources to get to those. And something that might not happen to particularly the universities that have resources, but when you look at I'm sure Wits University can fly the fundraiser to USA, maybe UJ can do the same as well. But then you look at fundraisers from other historically disadvantaged universities who don't have access to those things that we have. And sometimes, like you said, this space is just reserved for particular population, and you can even see it even when you start talking, because you talk differently, you behave differently. So I suppose it's just for you to navigate the space and try to you always say you don't change the direction of the wind, but then you try to navigate your way around the wind.
And this provides a very good segue for me to talk to you about the program that you enrolled in here at the Wits Business School, which is a postgraduate. This was a master's degree in African philanthropy, and within that there were modules around fundraising, resourcing, among others. How has that program helped you in doing your work and navigating some of those challenges?
It has helped me a lot, Prof, because you, as a student for that particular program, you're spoiled of choice. There's quite a lot to learn, not only to learn, but then it exposes you, or I was fortunate enough that the colleagues that were in my class are colleagues from the industry, some of them being grant makers, some of them being activists, some of them in the philanthropy space. So it exposes you to that. It's learning from your lecturers in the classroom, but also learning from your colleagues as well. So it has exposed me a lot in terms of what are other ways of approaching resource mobilization. And one of those lessons being what I've just said now, that the perception that the fundraising is the responsibility of the fundraising only. It exposed me to the concept of is it the right person who is making the ask? Are you making the ask for the right gift? Is the timing right? And all those things. We spend a lot of time talking about the sustainability of Africa, the sustainable development goals, and who is funding those. It opened up my mind to say, if you are not at the forefront, or you are not telling your story, then people will set the mandate for you. I've learned a lot. I've never paid attention to who is funding the sustainable development goals, because those are very important for Africa. I've always been very focused in funding education, which is also SDG 4, but I haven't really paid attention to other parts of those SDGs. And being in that class, I learned a lot about corporate social investment. In the context of South Africa, I also learned about CSR in other countries as well outside South Africa. And really that has helped me a lot in strategizing in terms of our fundraising initiatives, and also teaching my staff what I have learned, impacting that knowledge that I've learned here to my team members, and hence you will see some of them coming here as well, because it was not only the masters that I've done. You have also presented the masterclass in fundraising for us. So I can promise you that I'm not forcing them to come here or to study philanthropy. Let me just put it out there.
Their own,
it's their choice when I tell them, because after every class I would come excited that I have learned so much about this and that. And I really believe I didn't see things like that. So those were the exciting moments, and that some of them put me to shame, where my assumptions were challenged. I was like, I always saw this in this particular way, but having to learn and also practically see examples of those initiatives or those activities, this is what I will take back to my colleagues at work as well.
Yeah, actually you just said something that is very profound, because at times we think, you know, the impact comes from a lecturer. But in your case, because if I think of your class now and the people who are in your class, I realized that there were people who were from major foundations,
absolutely,
who were potentially your
funders.
Your funders. So you could literally go to them and fundraise from them on a peer-to-peer level. In fact, one of them is moving on to a big institution in London, going to manage a budget bigger than a current organization, right? Yes. Moving to look at Africa and Middle East, and you know the MENA region. So there's just that one element. You were in class with major foundations, but you were also in class with people who were also from major corporates, like your banks, who were actually managing scholarships as well as managing philanthropic work. But some of them were even managing the high net worth individual. So that means already you have access to some of that information and the trends and all of those things, and et cetera, et cetera. So the impact might actually even come more from your colleagues than actually from the classroom.
Yes. And even Prof, just how those colleagues think, because the way I thought I knew philanthropy was completely different from how they view it. So it was a value add to also get to see how the grant makers think, how people who are managing high net worth individual think. And we have created a long-lasting relationship. Some of those people, like we said just now, that you find that the space is reserved for some population, not for all. Some of them we knew about those organizations. We've been knocking on the door, but we didn't know who the right people are. But just being in their space, in the philanthropy space, I've learned a lot from them, and I even got a bonus of making some contacts as well, and sustainable relationships.
So talking of which, I know you also took the opportunity last year to go to one of our major conferences in Senegal. Again, that's a space that being a student at CAPSI also allows you to have access beyond your classmates, but to a bigger group of people who are involved in philanthropy. I don't want to be presumptuous, but I want to know, what was that experience like? Would you see that as something that we should build into the curriculum?
No, absolutely. I think you should build that into the curriculum. Maybe let me just start by saying that it's not only the networks of colleagues that you are studying with, but even the guest lecturers that the school has invited to present their experience, to teach the students. It's individuals who are in our spaces, most of them from these big foundations, from the civil society. So the networks that you are exposed to by the school is not only limited to your lecturers and your classmates, for lack of a better word, but also the people from the industry who are partnering with the school. And coming back to the conference, it was quite an exciting opportunity for me. It was the first academic conference that I have attended, the first academic conference that I have presented. Ed, you would recall that I was very nervous, and you kept on asking, but why are you nervous? Because you do presentation at your work. And I said, well, at my work I talk about experience, so I'm quite confident talking about my experience and what I know, but I'm in a unique space that I don't know much about. And even there, I made a lot of connections from people from the community, philanthropic community, and also from people from the industry, from corporate, as well as other students from other universities as well. So I do think that it's something that the school should build in. like your MBA students, and I think I discussed this with my supervisor as well, to say you have the MBA students who would always take a trip to go somewhere. I don't want to only learn about a Kenya Community Development Fund. I want to experience it as well. So I think it's something that going forward, you should really give it a try to see if you can build it into your program.
Yeah, so I've spoken to some of your colleagues before, and I've said to them, the disadvantage with you is that you were the first cohort. And so, you know, we are offering this program for the first time in an African continent. We want to do so many things, but we cannot do all of it. So there are certain things that we would not have built into, and we would want to learn from you as we go forward. And so I want to use this opportunity. You have already started saying, you know, maybe build this into it, that what are the other things that you would want us to, I mean, I'm talking about us, the university and the program. What are the other things that you think are missing that need to be built in so that those that come after you can actually benefit from your own experience? But also because we're piloting this with you. I don't want to use the word guinea pig, but we're actually piloting this and testing everything on you. So you are the people that we're just testing everything on. We had never done this anywhere else. And so hearing these nice things is nice, but we also want to hear some of the things that really need improvement. And I've been speaking to your supervisor, who is also our academic guide in this, for him to take a very big look at our programming, do curriculum review, hear from students so that we can actually improve from where we are right now.
Yet you can call us a guinea pig. You say you don't want to, but you've already said it. But yet we were the most successful.
We're testing everything on you, so
we're the pioneers.
So that's a better word.
Yes. So look, I think there's a lot. Obviously, we were the first cohort. The workload was just out of this world. But then because as a fundraiser, you always train your mind to see the glass as half full. You, in my view, I think something gotta give. You know, you didn't have weekends, but then at the end of the day, you absorbed so much knowledge that you did not have before. So I think for me, the Saturdays classes were much better for me, but not all
for everyone.
Not all for the same day. Would have maybe preferred if you had one maybe Friday evening and then the other, so that at least Sunday you have time to rest and look at other things as well. And again, I can't think of many, maybe because I'm never somewhere around here. I can't think. I have a lot of things to say, but I don't know how to say.
You should say them. I'm the one who is asking because we want to improve. I mean, and also it's good for others who are coming. People want to study this. It's always useful to hear from you, the student, the experience, so that if there are other areas that need to be improved, they do improve. So the issue of programming and scheduling is one that I think most people struggle with, because Saturdays, you actually had the whole day, morning to
and
evening.
We still had assignments
and exams,
presentations,
and syndicates, and all those things.
Absolutely. And I think because there are a lot of other modules that we did not get to do because of but I think it was because of the numbers.
The numbers,
So I would have really loved to take a module on private wealth, and I'm sure there were others who also wanted to take other modules on community philanthropy, or I can't remember all the modules at the top of my head. But then because our cohort was so small, and I suppose you also don't have a lot of resources in terms of just dedicating one resource to teaching two people, or three students. So I think maybe there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of attracting more students, and then I'm sure with, if the school is treating their pre-alumni well, then the students will also go out there and spread the word. And I'm still waiting for the marks for my for my research report. Yes.
Talking of which, your thesis focused on alumni.
Yes.
Was that informed and driven by the fact that that is one of the most challenging areas to fundraise from, or that was just driven by the fact that that's one of the subjects you are passionate about?
No, absolutely. You see my face lighting up when you talk about my research, because that's the highlight of my studies. I just learned a lot. At some stage, I thought it's breaking me, because when I thought I killed it, and my supervisor
sent it back
for something
with all sorts of comments,
yes,
as if you have not done
read,
anything.
Yes, and all that. But the subject of alumni giving, it's actually very close to my heart, because it talks to individual giving, and it talks to the community, the university community, taking back the power for me. Because when you talk about alumni, you talk about people who are permanent stakeholders for the university. I'm not going to change that. I'm an alumni for CAPSI. Whether I go to Harvard, whether I go to Oxford, I will still be the alumni of CAPSI. So I looked at alumni giving as one of the under-researched topic, particularly in the context of Africa. And I think my study results, I don't know if I can talk about my study results.
In fact, I wanted to ask you that, what drove you to study that? But what are your findings? Because, I mean, like you said, you have already completed. All you are waiting for is examination reports, which I must declare we have nothing to do with. It's a process that is handled by another unit. But I'm sure you did very well. I mean, your supervisor speaks highly about the findings. Because I think you guys worked very hard to really crunch the numbers and all of that. So let's talk a bit about some of the highlights of your findings.
Look, Prof, it was very fascinating, and I must say the first time when I analyzed my data, because I had my own assumptions, I told you these assumptions that we have that are not backed up by any data. When I looked at those results, the first thing was to say this can't be correct. I most probably have done something wrong here, because it's not what I see when I read other papers. So I would have expected something similar to that. And just to see something as simple as solicitation coming up on top, that for me to give, you have to ask me. I didn't think it can be something as simple as
because
that.
You'd have thought you're an alumni.
Reciprocity is,
you're an alumni, we gave you
benefit.
education, everything, you now give back.
Yes, and I thought, because in our context, most of our students are beneficiaries of the financial aid scheme, the National Financial Aid. I thought of they are giving back. So if I have received NSFAS, it's no longer a loan, it's a bursary, then I must give back. And I was quite surprised and taken aback that it's not even featuring anywhere in my fundings. And I got quite a good number of responses, just over 400 responses from both universities that I can't disclose, obviously, because of confidentiality. Yes. So it was quite fascinating to see that the only thing that you have to do to your alumni is solicitation, but then that goes with other things as well, because when you solicit to people, you must keep them informed, and then again it talks to how do you solicit from these people, and are you even the right person to be doing the solicitation? So it was quite fascinating, because that comes up on top, but we also have other variables like your social responsibility in terms of alumni being active citizens, which when I read the literature, because I was trying to write an article on active citizen, you see that as a foreign term, really, and active citizens. But in my studies, one of the findings is that alumni as active citizens are likely to give back to their alma mater.
And of course, all you have to do, like you said, is ask. The Americans do it very well.
They do.
You go to a hospital, you get treated, you are discharged. In a week's time, you are at home, you receive a letter saying you attended our facilities, you were helped this way, would you be willing to support us going forward?
Yes.
Right? So there's just a lot of them, of it about them, making it a conscious effort to call you, to write you, and to follow up. Immediately you receive a service to say, would you want to continue keeping us sustainable? We don't do that. Somebody finishes school here at VETS, we don't do anything except what you call this, a massive email that everyone gets.
People
It's a
want
mass
it personalized.
email. People want it personalized. I want to
Yeah.
get something that says, Dear Peggy Moyo,
Yeah.
you know, you started here, you know, and you graduated this year. Would you want to support somebody? And we make that a culture. So
Yeah, look, I think part of it, and also fostering the culture of philanthropy.
yeah,
I still believe, and that's what comes out in my study as well, that from the literature review, that the philanthropic culture is actually fostered or nurtured while people are still students on the system, because we don't do that. We want to shock them when they are out of the system, because maybe because we think they are already working class. But then in the context of Africa, when you look at African giving, and I know you are an expert in that subject, it was never influenced by you having a job or having a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a Western concept that giving is for the rich.
Yeah.
For us here in Africa, you give what you have. But
Yeah.
I suppose because we are very prescriptive on how much people must give and
yeah.
how they should give. But a lot of the literature that I have used for my study, it actually reveals that even the poor give for their own benefit. So I think the culture of giving, it has to be nurtured when people are still pre-alumni on the system. And again, I think maybe we are not doing the asking a lot because we don't know how to do the asking. Like I said, that fundraising is misunderstood, but also it's, I don't know how to put it. People don't respect it as a professional. They think it's just easy to go and just ask for money. I don't think people understand the work that goes behind the scene in terms of someone mobilizing resources, because if you don't know how to ask, you're going to miss out on opportunities. I think at some stage, I think it was during the master class, you made an example of meeting a potential donor that you've been wanting to meet. You got an opportunity, but then in that stage, is like you're not prepared. But how much do you want? So I think maybe part of us not asking is because we don't know how to do it, and we always have this assumption that it's just easy to send that mass communication to everyone, and people will respond to it. But sometimes people want a personalized approach of asking. Part of the literature that I have used in my study revealed that when you look at the millennials, they were quite happy in one of the study to give online digital fundraising. But when you ask them about solicitation, if they were happy with online solicitation, that number declined. So again, it talks to whether you're asking in the right way. Because it might be that for me, picking up a phone and doing the ask is what will work for me. But then for someone else, they are happy to receive an email from you. Someone else is happy to receive a visit from you as a fundraiser, or your principal, or the dean who has taught them, or even from other alumni as well. So I think it's quite broad, but up until we develop this skill, the fundraising as a skill, and as a profession as well, we will always struggle as to how do we ask, because in the US, I know that they take it very serious. Few weeks back, I attended a study tour in New York by Mirate USA. And when I was looking at their presentation, I could see that, you know, some of their stats are completely different from ours. I had an assumption that foundations are giving more, but I only
it's
learned that
individuals.
it's individuals who are
Yeah.
giving more.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if we also record, giving in Africa, we might actually come to
Yeah.
the same conclusions that individuals give more, but provided we are not prescribing
Yeah.
as to what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
should give.
Yeah. Yeah. So fascinating, because one of the things that your study is showing is that you must separate the way of asking and the way of giving. So young people might find it easier to give online simply because that's what they know.
It's convenient.
And it's convenient. But they don't want to be asked online because you are not treating them as humans when you
Yes.
ask online. You should ask them, people to people, but the giving instrument is going to be very different.
Yes.
So I want to end here. Daphney, thank you so much for making the time. You have a Setswana name, and I was struggling to pronounce it.
Kesa Obaka.
Yeah. Can we break it down? You said it means to praise God.
Kesa Obaka in Tswana means
Yeah.
I'm still praising him.
Yeah.
So this is the name that I was given to by my great-grandmother who raised me, whom I only learned now after being at KPC that she was a philanthropist in her own right, because I grew up in a family where I have a lot of cousins, only to learn now when I'm older that they're not really my cousins. They were children from the village, from our distant relatives, and we all stayed under the same house. She fed us, she punished us as well. She was a disciplinarian, but I think, in today's terms, we would have said she was an abuser. Yes. So that's what my name means, is someone that I look up to, who has taught me the importance of giving, because she gave selflessly. And at that time I didn't see it as a big deal. I actually thought she was just overcrowding our space, but I only learned now that she also was a philanthropist in her own right.
So we look up to you to speak to our potential students and tell them why they should study at KPC. Which one is your camera? So there is your camera.
Philanthropy is very important for the development and sustainability of Africa. And I do think that is a topic that is understudied, and we need to develop more and more philanthropists. We need to develop more and more resource mobilizers or fundraisers, so that they are able to teach this philanthropist, or rather guide them on where to give. So having said that, Prof and his colleagues need more and more students, or rather academics, to come and take over from them, teach philanthropy. So students, I think, as someone complete their metric certificate, they should be able already to know the power of philanthropy, and they should already be courses that really will steer them or drive them towards the philanthropy as a profession, as a cause. Because like I said, if Africa wants to develop itself, Africa has to set its own agenda, and this cause has the power to transform the landscape of philanthropy, particularly in the context of Africa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daphney, for making the time, and we treat you as one of our ambassadors for the program. I think there's a lot that we still have to do in collaboration with yourself and your other colleagues. I'm sure that as the time progresses, we'll be able to see what you do, but also to put in action the work that you have done and the research that we have actually done. Thank you so much. That was Daphney Nemakhavhani joining us on our conversations on African philanthropy. Daphney is currently, as we said in the beginning, the Director of Fundraising and Development at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the KPC podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.